What'd you think when you first read this case, girl?
It's a very shocking and sad thing when you read that a 6-year-old little girl died along with her mother.
Lisa Bennett was a 29-year-old single mother who was crazy about her 6-year-old daughter, Kaylee.
What kind of person kills a 6-year-old?
I think that whoever killed them killed her because she was a witness to him killing the mom, because no one would want to kill a 6-year-old sitting on the couch coloring in her coloring book. On June 6, 1993, 6-year-old Kaylee was found by her own grandmother lying on her living room floor, strangled to death. Police later found Kaylee's mom, Lisa, in the back bedroom. She was also strangled. You know, and it was like a sloppy killing, too.
He killed both of them in the same manner with whatever he had available right there at that moment.
Yeah, because this is not a killer that wore gloves and who's real smart. This is a different kind of killer. This is a sloppy killer. He should have left something behind.
This week, in addition to interviewing witnesses and suspects, we are having all the items from the crime scene that appear to be touched by the killer retested using the most up-to-date DNA technology.
Kaylee would be 27 years old today because she was 6 when she was murdered. It's been 21 years.
Yeah.
A grown woman with her own babies. Yolanda and I are both moms, so a case like this is the kind that you try your hardest on, you pray the hardest on, you work the hardest on. You just have to. I just know we can't leave this town where a mother and a 6-year-old were murdered and not clear this case. We can't.
It has been 16 years and still no answer.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
There are so many cold cases out there just waiting to be solved.
The crime scene ultimately tells the story of the murder.
We want to bring justice to these victims. Hi, how are y'all?
Kelly? Carrie Young.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Scott Tegmeyer.
Oh, nice to meet you.
This is our Deputy Chief.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming and working with us.
Well, we're excited to be here. Y'all have a very good reputation, you know. People say good things about y'all from all over. The extra pressure, which y'all already feel, is because of babies involved. I mean, we all know that. Maybe we can have just a little bit of luck and y'all can put this one away.
Sounds good. It's always more traumatic to work a homicide with a child, especially if you have children of your own. You go home and you see your children, and you're just thankful that they're still with you. You must be Alan.
Yeah.
Carrie Young.
Alan Brown.
Nice to meet you, Carrie.
This case has a lot of physical evidence, but it also has some potentially uncooperative witnesses. So it's great to have Alan Brown because he has so many years of experience working on homicide cases.
How do you guys want to start?
We want to start with you running down your case to us.
Okay, June 21st, 1993, Irene Whirling, who was the grandmother of Kaylee and the mother of Lisa Bennett. She was supposed to call her daughter in the morning. She tried calling several times, didn't get an answer. She ended up going to the house, found the front door ajar. She entered the house, immediately saw her granddaughter laying on the floor, Kaylee. First officer on the scene said he walked in, found Kaylee face down with a cord wrapped around her neck 8 times. She was strangled. As he searched the house, he found Kaylee's mother, Lisa, in the bedroom, laying partially on the bed, naked from the waist down. She had a bag over her head and a belt wrapped around her neck.
Who do y'all want to put up first on the suspect board?
Bryce. That's Bryce.
Bryce McGriff.
He was the current boyfriend.
And married at the same time.
She was looking forward to the fact that maybe he was going to come over that night because he was due to come back into town.
Bryce had gone to a family function in Texas the weekend of the homicide. Lisa was anticipating that he might stop by after his return flight from Texas.
I wrote down 11:30 to 1:30 is our window for the murder.
Yeah, your time frame's right. And his flight landed at 10 o'clock,
Yep.
which puts him right in the time frame.
Bryce also has a history of domestic disturbances, which could suggest a possibly violent past.
Okay, who's your next one?
And that would be Franklin Douglas.
What are we going to call him all week?
Frank or D?
Frank or D? What do y'all want to put up here first?
Ex-boyfriend.
Ex-boyfriend.
And he's got quite a few. We got the old reports of him abusing.
Other women?
Yes.
She learns the night before that he's living with her friend, her best friend, Stephanie. According to witnesses, Lisa finds out that Frank actually has moved in with her best friend, Stephanie, on Saturday night, the 19th, one day before the murder. Everybody said that she was off the chart mad on Saturday and Sunday, complaining to her sisters, her mother, and everybody about Franklin and Stephanie living together behind her back.
And the threats she made referenced the robbery.
The night before the murder, Lisa goes over to Stephanie's house, bangs on the door, and yells out to Frank, "I know you robbed that store, and I'm telling the police about it."
So she's threatening to send him to prison.
Okay, so I'm going to call those threat/motive. Lisa believed that she had information about a robbery that Franklin had committed, and she threatened to go to the police with that information, so this could have been our motive. What's the family say about you cranking all this up again?
I mean, they've waited 21 years.
Jackie, Yolanda, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Must be Miss Irene.
Hi, Yolanda, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Kelly, nice to meet you. It's bad enough if you're the mom who loses a child. Irene Whirling didn't just lose her daughter, she lost her granddaughter.
It was just devastating. You know, I never had an idea in my life that I'd ever witnessed something like this. Last time I spoke to Kaylee, she called and she wanted to come over and spend the night. And I said to her, "Why don't you wait until tomorrow, because Papa's going to work and he won't be here." I woke up early that morning and I thought things was something strange going on in my gut, you know. And I started calling her around 6 o'clock and getting no answer. And I don't know what it was. It kept drawing me to Lisa's. I opened the door and the TV was on and everything. The drapes was closed. And I shouted for Lisa with no answer. And I looked again. I was in shock. I thought Kaylee was laying there. She looked like she was asleep, but she looked like she'd been beaten. And I'll tell you, that's been the worst time in my life ever. I just wished that I had got them to stay that night before. I just wish that.
What bothers me the most is that little girl fought when she was born, and I know she fought going out, and I hate that. I hate it. I just don't understand how you can hurt a baby. I mean, it's bad enough they took my sister, but I felt like she was one of mine.
It's a horrible, horrible, I don't even know.
I don't know what she goes through. I can never imagine in my wildest dreams what she has gone through.
Nothing has been that bad as when they were murdered. How much do I miss them? If I could cut my heart out right now to bring them back, I would do it.
Well, you already know that the Fort Wayne Police Department has never given up. And we're hoping for that little bit of God or luck or whatever you want to call it to push the case
Pray
far
every
enough
day for
along.
that.
Do you?
Yes, I do, really.
Like I said, I've never give up hope. Never.
When you meet a family like Jackie and like Irene, and all they want is to find out who murdered their sister, their daughter, their granddaughter, they're not asking for a lot. They just want the person who did it to be held accountable and have to pay and be punished. And that ought to happen for everybody.
I don't know that crime scenes get any easier. I think you just learn to put your emotions where they need to be. Ultimately, you'll have to deal with those emotions, but you learn to deal with them later. Instead, do what you're supposed to do so that you can help these victims that you're looking at.
We're investigating the murder of 6-year-old Kaylee Bennett and her mother, Lisa, both brutally murdered back in 1993.
So basically, the couch would have been here?
Yeah. Main couch is set up the same now as what it was back then.
Okay.
Kaylee's in the middle of the floor,
Yep.
laying watching
Sitting
TV.
It makes you wonder, though, if the blanket is there, she's got her coloring book, she's got her food, she's got the TV on. You know, I don't think a 6-year-old sets it up so nice and proper. Her mom set her up there because she wanted her to be self-entertained while what else is going on.
This case doesn't appear to be a random intruder for a lot of reasons. You don't have forced entry. The only thing that seems to be missing is a VCR that seems to have been grabbed as the killer left. It would appear that the person that was in the house was probably known to Lisa and Kaylee. She's sitting on the bed. You know, like they're discussing, arguing, and for whatever reason, it all goes wrong at that moment. Our suspect grabs a belt, puts it around her neck.
Wraps it around her neck. And he pulls back. The whole mattress shifts off the box spring.
The belt snaps from our suspect pulling it so hard on her neck. You can see there's definitely some struggle going on here. She's got bruising.
Grab marks.
Yes. She was fighting. He then grabs a plastic bag, ties it on her head. So suffocation and strangulation. It's a combination of the both that actually killed her.
Her dress is underneath her, like sitting on the dress.
All right, so he's killed her, and then he just takes the dress and goes like this because this part's still under her for the douche.
One strange aspect of the crime scene are the 2 empty bottles of feminine douche, which appear to have been used recently.
Next question is, did she have sex with this person? Because I think he's trying to get rid of any of himself in her at all.
It's possible that Lisa had sex with her killer that night, and the killer might have used the douche bottles to get rid of any physical evidence that he left behind.
This person also takes her purses, looking through it, I'm assuming for money, drops her driver's license. His exit is going to be to go back through that front door and out of here. But now we have a problem because we have Kaylee sitting here. This person's already thinking strangulation. He takes that cord, wraps it around Kaylee's neck 8 times, then just drops her where she falls right onto the floor.
And walked out the door.
And then walked out the door.
I had a case once where the mother and a child were murdered. It was a capital murder. And the guy used a lamp cord, you know, that you plug in. And he used that to strangle the mother. And DNA came back on the lamp cord. So I was really hoping that cord would have some luck.
Or the belt that was around Lisa's neck.
Even better.
When this murder happened 21 years ago, DNA testing was limited to biological fluids only. Let's put up some of our evidence. We actually have quite a few pieces. But now we have the ability to detect DNA left behind by something as simple as the touch of someone's hand.
She had a bag that was placed over her head,
a belt tied around her neck. So with such a messy crime scene, so many items in play,
we do have a sexual assault kit.
We are practically sending everything off to the lab to be tested or retested in hopes of catching our killer.
I mean, that's murder weapon stuff that you know he touched, and if we think that he's in a frenzy, he's not wearing gloves.
No.
God, there ought to be something there.
Yep.
Lisa had dated both the suspects, Franklin Douglas and Bryce McGriff. So we're going to talk to anyone who knew Lisa back then or the men that she dated in the hopes of better understanding her world.
Did you know if Lisa had any other boyfriend?
No, She wasn't dating. His name was Frankie or Frank.
In your recollection, can you describe this gentleman again the best you can?
So tell us about Frank.
You ain't right in the head, man. Everybody knows he is not right in the head.
Well, she had told me he had been in trouble, I think, for drugs. I think that's why he was in, I believe he went to jail for a while. And I thought he was a shady character.
Franklin Douglas was an addict who, when he was interrogated 21 years ago, said he was out that night getting high with his friends Garfield Trigg and Dwayne Hall. How are you, sir? So Garfield is one of the only people who can confirm Franklin's alibi that night.
Do you remember D? D, that's what I'm trying to picture, D.
That's from '99.
I just can't picture.
He doesn't look familiar at all, huh? You know, sometimes they say, I don't know that guy, and you think, oh, they're just covering.
In my head back then, I was drugging and drinking.
But the perfectly acceptable explanation for that is that Garfield Trigg's brain is completely fried about what happened in his life 21 years ago. Well, let's hope for Dwayne Hall. All right, we need him. Now Now there's only one person who can confirm Franklin's alibi for the night Kaylee and Lisa were killed.
Dwayne.
Nice to meet you.
Alan Brown. How you doing, man? All right, how you guys doing?
Good. If you just want to hop in front here and...
Does the name Franklin Douglas ring a bell to you as to D?
Oh.
So that's D, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, well.
Okay.
And there's his name.
All I know him by is D. I never knew about Franklin Douglas or anything.
Right.
What I can remember is that I was just sitting up in the house. He came by unexpectedly and knocked on the door, and he's like, man, you want to get high? I was like, yeah, I don't mind. I said, well, we can't hear because my kids is here.
Right.
So I decided, well, we'll go over to my friend Garfield Trigg's house. We got high over there, and then after all the drugs were gone, then he stayed over to Garfield's house, and I walked on home.
Was D high that night too?
Oh, we all were high.
Everybody.
Me, him, Garfield.
Yeah. Franklin says in a statement that after you got high, you went out to a club.
No. I ain't go to no club. I was too high to go to a club. I was trying to make it home.
Well, that's all what Frank's stating you guys did together, and we're trying to establish from your aspect and point of view
I understand.
and whether he's telling us the truth or he's lying.
That's a lie.
In 1993, loving mother Lisa Bennett and her 6-year-old daughter Kaylee were tragically murdered. The alibi of one of our suspects, Franklin Douglas, has been called into question.
Franklin says that after you got high, you went out to a club.
That's a lie.
Now we need to focus on the days leading up to the murder so we can understand Lisa's relationship with Franklin Douglas and with Bryce McGriff.
You want to just have a seat over there, Tracy?
Tracy Starks was a friend of Lisa's who reached out to the police in the days after she was killed.
I called them and told them, because I know how terrified she was.
How terrified she was?
Oh yeah, because she was just real jittery the last time I saw her. I went over there and she was, every light that passed her window, she would jump and everything. I was like, what's wrong with you? She started talking about her boyfriend and stuff like that.
What was she telling you about her boyfriend? Tell us about what her fears were.
I know she said that he threatened her and said he was gonna kill her. She was scared and it escalated where she was really worried about it.
Did she say why he was saying he was gonna?
No, I have no idea why.
Did she say who the boyfriend was?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Tracy told us that Lisa was afraid of a boyfriend she had been dating. So Scott and Alan are headed to Texas to talk to the man she was supposed to have a date with that very night.
Hey, Bryce, Alan Brown.
Bryce McGriff.
I'm a retired homicide detective from Houston. How long did you know her about it?
Maybe a week or two. Somewhat, I didn't know her that long. Even though I didn't know her that long, I was going through so much, and it was somebody I could talk to about my problems too, what I was going through. And that's the kind of like relationship we end up having. Then that happened, and that was done, you know.
So when they broke the news to you that Lisa and Kaylee were murdered, I mean, you became very upset.
That was the only person I had to talk to.
Yeah.
That's what nobody could understand.
Bryce clearly had feelings for Lisa.
That was the only person I could talk to at the time. That was the only person.
But we need to verify his whereabouts on the night of the murder because he comes back into town right around the same time Lisa and Kaylee are murdered. Lisa was killed on a Sunday night, okay? And that would be the weekend that you say you came to Dallas for the family reunion, correct?
Well, no, I flew out because it was a bad storm coming in and we ended up getting delayed. It was Sunday night. I made it back into Fort Wayne after 10 o'clock. But I know I had tried to call her a couple of times when I came back because I was still at the airport. I remember trying to call her, but nobody answered.
And you didn't go by her house after that?
No, I didn't go by her house.
But when you got back home after your airplane landed, you call anybody down here to let them know you made it safe, or?
Man, I don't even remember. Believe it or not, I don't remember.
Were you living with your wife at the time?
Yes, we were still living together.
But you're in the process of a divorce?
Yes, yes.
When you fly in from the airport, do you have a car at the airport?
No.
Okay.
She had to come get me.
She had to come get you?
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing I can see motive-wise as to why Bryce would want to kill Lisa. But we still need to check his alibi to make sure he's still telling the truth.
Hello?
This is Detective Tagmeyer with the Fort Wayne Police Department. I got your number from your ex-husband, Bryce.
Okay.
And I'm currently working a cold case that happened back in 1993. And at that time, according to Bryce, you and he were on the verge of splitting up.
Yes.
Well, during that time, one of the young ladies that Bryce had met and her daughter were murdered.
Wow.
And the actual weekend of her murder, Bryce stated he had flown to Texas for a family reunion, and you and the kids didn't want to go. I guess where I'm going with this is, did you ever pick him up at the airport?
Oh, gosh, no. No. I would remember that easily. Carrying around toting young kids.
Bryce's ex-wife just completely blew his alibi out of the water.
Definitely not. I could tell you for a fact Ellie did not pick him up.
Investigators are tracking down the detective who originally interviewed Bryce McGriff in order to compare his statements about his alibi.
There it is.
Is that it down there?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, one of Franklin's exes has agreed to talk to us about her relationship with him.
This is Kelly. She's helping me on this case. Okay. And you were with him for how long?
Probably 6 years.
Why don't you go into what the relationship was like?
It was good at first, and then he ended up doing drugs. He would take rent money, and he stole my daughter's TV.
What did he do with the TV he stole?
I think he sold it for drugs.
How many times in all this relationship would you say he stole things from you or your house or your kids' things and went to buy drugs?
Probably a dozen.
You know, stories about Franklin pawning electronics makes you think of that VCR that was missing from the house that night. This is kind of an embarrassing question, but I need to ask it because of our case. Did he ever, have this weird thing about wanting you to douche before sex, after sex with him at all?
He had a discussion with me about douching.
Really? See, I just think that's so odd.
Yeah.
First you have the VCR, and now we have Franklin talking about douches, and we have douche bottles in the sink that night.
It was a back and forth thing. He was evil while he was on the drugs.
When you talk about evilness, what do you mean by that?
When I was pregnant once, he pushed me up against the door and grabbed me.
Grabbed you by the throat.
Yeah, he scared me because he would foam at the mouth. He would get so mad and angry, spitting, and then white foam would be coming down. Yeah, and that's how I knew.
Get away.
Get away.
Franklin's aggressive behavior toward a pregnant woman makes you wonder what the heck other aggressive behavior he has in his past. Ormy Douglas, born in 1945. Ormy Douglas is Franklin Douglas's uncle.
Are you Ormy? I'm saying, shut up and get in the house. Get in the house.
And he once reported a violent confrontation he had with Franklin to the police.
He tried to kill me. He was inside my son's house. He pulled a gun on me and shot down between my legs. And I went out. I just left and went outside and started to get in my truck. And he came out and said, "You son of a bitch, you won't bother nobody else." And pulled the trigger, and it wouldn't fire. It misfired.
How did you first hear about what happened to Lisa and Kaylee?
I heard it on the news.
On the news?
Yes. And when they mentioned her name, I said, "Is that the girl that D came over here with?" Gene said, "I think it is." And I asked him, I said, "Man, you heard what happened to your woman and your little girl?" He said, "Yeah, I heard about that." I said, "Did you do that thing?" He said, "Nope, I didn't do it." He said, "Man, I couldn't do nothing like that to kill that little girl." He said, "I love that little girl." He denied it, so that's all I could say to him.
But you flat out asked him.
Oh, yeah, I asked him.
What did you think about his denial when he's telling you he wasn't?
I believe him.
Didn't believe him?
No, especially after the stuff he tried to do to me, and I'm his blood relative. He tried to do it to me. No telling what he would do to somebody else.
With more and more witness statements raising questions about Franklin, we need to clear up the other potential involvement of our suspect, Bryce McGriff, before we can move on. How are you, sir? I'm Kelly.
Kelly, hi, my name's
Nice
Al.
to meet you. Detective Al Fiegel was the original investigator who interviewed Bryce McGriff in 1993 right after the murder.
I talked to him quite a bit
You actually looked at Bryce because he was supposed to come in at 10 o'clock that night. He landed at 10 o'clock at the airport.
Back then, Bryce McGriff told Al Fiegel that he had driven himself to the airport and left his car there, so he was able to drive himself home the night of the murder. So maybe he forgot today what he said back then, and it's all very understandable.
The first question I had to these guys was, hey, do you happen to have the phone records on Bryce?
Al also looked into the calls that Bryce claimed he made right around the time of the murders.
You verified the long-distance records?
Yes.
With his alibi for the night of the murder confirmed and no real motive for wanting Lisa dead, we need to figure out whether or not Bryce even needs to stay on our suspect board. Are y'all good with crossing him off the board as one of your suspects for good and for always?
Yes.
Alan and Yo? All right, so we can tell your prosecutors that you've done all the to-dos on Bryce McGriff. With Bryce eliminated, all of our focus is now on Franklin Douglas, the suspect whose alibi was disputed by Dwayne Hall.
Franklin says that you went out to a club.
That's a lie.
However, Dwayne still was the last person to see Franklin before Lisa and Kaylee were killed. Franklin wasn't seen again until 1 in the morning.
This is Kelly. She's helping me out on the case.
Nice to meet you. When he came home to Stephanie's house, the girl he was living with at the time, who happened to be Lisa's best friend.
Lisa called and she goes, well, you know this ends our friendship. And I said, you know, Lisa, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen.
So if Franklin did kill Lisa and Kaylee, we're hoping that Stephanie will remember something that happened that night when he came home.
And it was, I think, about 10 till 1, the night of the murder, right? I remember him coming in, and I thought he looked really funny.
Okay, do you know that what you're talking about right now is the most important thing you'll probably ever talk about in your whole life?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because 2 people got murdered.
You said he looked different. Be more specific.
Well,
tell us everything you can think of.
He always got a weird look about him when he smoked crack. It's like his skin got darker and his eyes looked funny, and I mean, I could just tell.
Was he sweaty?
Well, I remember, you know, trying to touch his hands, and he didn't want me to touch his hand. And he got down on his knees and he starts crying. I'm like, what's wrong? And he goes, oh, I messed up. I made a mistake. I slipped and I smoked some crack. I go, you know what? I just, I'm going to bed. I don't even want to. I can't deal with this.
It's so frustrating to think that Stephanie just went to bed when there's so much information she might have known that could help this case.
Did you ever directly ask him if he killed Lisa and Kaylee?
No, I just said...
Why not?
I just said I didn't trust him. I didn't know... I can't say that somebody did this because I wasn't with him. I don't know. I mean, the fact that a friend and a child is murdered makes me sick to my stomach. I've told you everything. I just want you to believe me, that's all. I can't say something I don't know.
Although suspicions are growing around Franklin Douglas, without Stephanie giving us anything, we don't have enough to build a circumstantial case. So the DNA results we're waiting for from Sorensen Labs will be an essential part to finally putting Kaylee and Lisa's murder behind bars.
I told Carrie last night, if this case doesn't come back with DNA, I'm gonna cry.
Oh, God.
And you know I never say that, right?
Nope, you don't.
No, I will cry.
And here's our call. This is Carrie.
Hi, Detective Young.
Yes.
So if you have results,
Okay.
okay, the douche bottle applicator, both suspects are excluded as contributors.
Ouch.
The victim's oral swab, that one was also a mixture of at least 2 males. The victim's dress has too many male contributors for us to do comparisons.
Is that 2 males?
Too many.
Too many.
Okay. Hearing there are too many male contributors on a piece of evidence makes me think it's contaminated, especially since this evidence was collected 21 years ago.
Okay, the belt, the 3 contributors.
Those contributors could be suspects, but they could also be police personnel or even lab personnel.
What's next, Cammie?
The plastic bag, that has more than 5 male contributors. With the age of this crime scene, unfortunately, most of it is inconclusive.
These DNA results are devastating. They're about as bad as you could get. It's one thing when an item comes back inconclusive, you can still work on building a circumstantial case. But with these results, you've pretty much established reasonable doubt as a defense argument for anyone to make.
21 years ago, they didn't have some of the rules and regulations.
This
in
was
place.
right before O.J. Simpson, guys. O.J. Simpson changed the world of collection, so no one did it right back then. Okay, here. The DNA has lost us the case in the mind of the prosecutor, all right? So let's regroup. The only answer is then for you to make a hard run at Franklin Douglas. Is that your last shot?
What do you think?
I don't think that Carrie and Scott can walk away unless they do this.
I agree.
I think you better be crossing all your fingers and all your toes and hoping for a miracle.
You don't have any weapons on you now, do you?
Do you remember what you done the night Lisa and Kaylee were killed?
No idea.
No idea. Do you remember what you told the police back then?
No, I don't.
You don't remember that? That's a big deal.
I mean, it is a big deal, but I
You
just don't
showed the
remember.
police where your alibi is. You don't remember that?
No, I don't, man. I was up back then. I'll be honest with you.
You weren't
And
up when you
today-
were with the police.
And today, you know, I have problem remembering things. You know, I think I'm having the same thing my mom had. You know, she's suffering from dementia. You know,
Yeah, but how many double murders have you been interviewed on?
One.
Well, like you said, you didn't go to the funeral because Stephanie told you not
She
to.
told me not to.
Why?
Because the family hated me. For some reason, they were stuck on me. I was the one that murdered her daughter.
As detectives, what would come into my mind right now is why you remember the particular detail as to why you didn't go to the funeral and who told you not to go to the funeral, but you can't remember the other significant
I mean,
details.
I can remember some things, but
Well,
not everything, you know?
You can't tell me where you were that night and what you told the police the next day.
I can't tell you where I was last week.
That's my point, is that you can remember that, but not the other important details. You
The
see what I'm
important
saying?
details is I didn't kill nobody, man. I mean, I know y'all out here doing your job, you know, and I appreciate that. I hope you find the person that did it, but I'm not the one.
Franklin's interview is disappointing, but it's not surprising.
Good luck with you guys, man. Seriously.
Carrie and Scott had to give it a try and do their best, but none of us are surprised by what happened. We can't criticize y'all for lack of trying.
No, that was a good interview. He's smart.
Y'all went for 2 hours, and all of you couldn't have done any better. So what are you thinking, Carrie?
I'm going to go back and review the evidence again and make sure there's not something that we missed. I mean, it's far from over.
I was thinking this morning, Yolanda, we haven't had to do this for a while.
No.
To go give bad news, and I forgot how awful it is.
This is going to be difficult.
I mean, I really, really thought we would solve this one, and we didn't.
This is going to be hard for Carrie, too.
Yes, it is. That's why I need to talk to him, because I don't think that it's right to make that family think that there's something else he can do. He can't do anything else. Carrie is not going to give up. He wants to spend the rest of his career working on a case that, honestly, no prosecutor would ever take. The unfortunate truth about this case is that our DNA has created reasonable doubt forever. Without a true confession, this case is done. It is over with. And we're not just saying that now, we're saying that forever. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'll be glad when this is over.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you going to tell them when we go in there, and tell me what you're thinking?
I think we just be honest that the DNA didn't help us, and we're going to continue to work on the case.
Let me tell you something. You're never going to get there. and it's not your fault. But you're so sweet, you want to keep working, and it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. I understand. I do.
Think of how you're going to tell them.
It's going to be tough.
God, it's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
It's going to be horrible.
Well, we've done all of our interviews, we've tested all the evidence, and we're not any better off than what we were. The DNA evidence actually hurt us being able to go any further with the case.
See, things are different. 21 years ago, DNA was different than it is today. Today, there's a lot of protocols in place so that you don't contaminate it.
So, what that means is your DA has a right to always say, all that DNA is built-in reasonable doubt. I'm not going to file this case. And we can't sit here and leave you with the thought that maybe one day that would make me crazy.
Right.
And I don't think it's fair to you because I don't think maybe one day is ever going to happen. Not in this lifetime.
So,
and
never?
so no, never.
So he's gotten away with. Come on, Jackie. Come on. I know. I know, though. Come on, Jackie.
No, it's okay.
I know.
Look.
It's not your fault.
This is why you have to know. You can't live the rest of your life calling this man and him trying to fix it.
I know.
You can't. You guys did all you could do. Because he can't fix it, okay? I'm sorry.
Oh, don't cry, Kelly.
No, last night we drove away. Carrie said, I'm going to get him. I'm going to go interview more people. I'm going to test more stuff. He did, but he can't fix it.
The good Lord one day will step in. It'll come to him. It'll happen. God works in mysterious ways. There's angels out there, and they are looking down, helping us get through all of this. I can hear my daughter. I can close my eyes and hear her voice. And Kaylee, too. Those are my angels.
We were so hopeful, and then that DNA came back.
And that's what's hurting us.
It screws us.
There's nothing else we can do, and it's time for us to... I don't want to say this, but it's time to move on. But I don't want him to think we've given up on him. And I think by moving, I know we gotta move on.
And I'm so sorry for you.
Oh.
I hope that they understand that Carrie and Scott in the Fort Wayne Police Department did everything they could. We just couldn't get there, and it's heartbreaking for all of us. I'm sorry.
You have to say
Maybe when they have memories of Lisa and Kaylee, they can try to figure out a way to deal with their deaths as not murders that went unpunished, but just as a tragedy that happened so they can get rid of the anger and try and move on.
Welcome to the city of Greenville. They lined up how many witnesses?
95.
Oh my God.
That's just all the statements. 17 years, because it happened in 1997. Early on February 24th, 1997, two young boys found their mom, Kim Steffen, and her boyfriend, Dennis Young, lying dead on the living room floor. Each had been shot to death, and Dennis's neck had been sliced and stabbed. And Kim's two sons are the ones that found them that morning in the house. That's a pretty horrible thing to remember for the rest of your life when you're that young. Because it's a small town where the case went unsolved for so long, a ridiculous rumor started that Kim's 12 and 15-year-old sons committed the murder. So our goals this week are to prove that Kim's sons in no way committed this crime and to find the killer or killers responsible for murdering Kim Steffen and Denny Young.
It has has been 16 years and still no answers.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
There are so many cold cases out there just waiting to be solved.
The crime scene ultimately tells the story of the murder.
We want to bring justice to these victims. Come on, sunshine. Knock, knock.
Morning.
Hi.
Eric Roberts. Eric Curlick.
Nice to meet you.
We are very excited to have you here. This case has been something hanging around our neck since 1997.
How many unsolved cold cases do y'all have?
One.
So if we get this one knocked out, y'all are good.
We're right at the crest.
The case is enormous. 16 binders, 5,000 pages in total. This is a small community. This is an unsolved murder. To say that it was a black eye for the department would be an understatement.
What do y'all want us to call y'all all week? Eric.
You can call me anything you like.
We can call you Lon anything you like, too.
Good morning, boys.
Hello.
It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Hey, Steve. Good to see you again. We're bringing back experienced investigator Steve Spingola, and for the first time, we're inviting Derek Fell, who we worked with on 2 different cases in Vigo County, Indiana, which resulted in arrests and a confession.
I walked in the house, I grabbed the knife, and I walked right over and I killed her.
We turned Derek into a believer on how to solve cold cases.
Did you ever see Erica like this?
He knows how we put all of the little pieces together.
I'm just racking my brain on this.
And we are so excited to bring him on our team.
This will be this 6-foot cord. It's extended as far as it'll go.
It is such a cool thing. We get to meet all of these bright, very talented investigators all over the country in these little towns. And now we can invite all of them to come work with us on all of our cases, kind of like paying it forward.
I have never seen a case researched to this degree. It's just incredible.
I guess the one that sticks out the most is that, 2 young boys found their mom, and they were separated because they both had different dads.
Lost their mom, but they kind of lost each other.
They did. I mean, they have each other now. For that scene to be found by 2 kids is
Yeah, it's pretty horrific.
Is this a picture of Kim with her 2 sons?
That had been a couple years prior to the event, yes.
She was 38, right?
Correct. Kim had just left her husband, Bob Steffen, a couple months before. She got in a relationship with Dennis Young.
This is a cool picture. Where'd you get that?
From the family.
Dennis Young, who also went by the name Denny, was a 55-year-old widower with several grown children. He lived in Greenville most of his life, and he was really well known in the community.
Dennis worked at a gas station as a manager. He was the type of guy, if you went in there every day, if you had cigarettes or whatever, he would have you rung up before and your cigarettes ready for you because he just knew everybody.
So what do y'all want to put down for our date of murder?
23rd would be the death, 24th is the discovery.
At Dennis's house?
At Dennis's, yes. The 2 boys, they had not heard from their mom. They got a ride, they went to the house, they went to the back door, found the jar, walked in, and then discovered the bodies.
On the living room floor were Kim and Denny, both dead, with Kim resting on top of him with her hand still clutching his pants legs.
Kim was shot 3 times in the torso area, puncturing lungs, liver, and kidneys. Mr. Young was shot twice. Later was determined it was by a .22. The firearm later on we determined was actually taken from the male victim. He had a gun cabinet. One of the most significant things when they were doing the crime scene is they found some significant inflictions upon the male victim, 10 deep incision wounds.
Dennis was stabbed repeatedly in the neck, and while the gun that shot them was never recovered, the knife was found at the crime scene in the kitchen sink. But the only blood or DNA on the knife was Dennis's.
So he was cut after he was shot, which is weird.
Kim and Denny's last known whereabouts was at a place called Eagles Hall, a social club which they left about 1:30 in the morning.
Because their bodies were discovered with their coats still on, the investigators always believed they were murdered as soon as they entered the house. The question is, by whom? Do y'all want to start putting what we have and what we do know on the board? All right. Robert Bob Steffen, intelligent.
Yes, he is. Majored in engineering.
Bob and Kim were married in 1991. Kim and her 2 sons from previous marriages lived with Bob until 1996. She filed for divorce in October of 96. Even though her divorce wasn't quite final, Kim had already begun dating again. How about being jealous?
Yes, Bob made some comments in passing to people about his displeasure of Denny being with Kim.
Because of the divorce all by itself, Bob has a motive. What he doesn't have is an alibi. His movements that night are really hard to account for.
He starts off with a date. He's done with the date by 8:30. Obviously, it's not too great of a date.
The one time that Bob's whereabouts that night can be accounted for is during a blind date that had ended several hours earlier that night. That date had been set up by Bob's friend, Patty Burton. Talk about Patty Burton.
Patty is from the Dayton area. She's a very, very rough character. She's out there.
How do they know each other?
She said that he worked on sinks and cabinets for her.
Knows Bob as handyman and how else? Drinking buddy?
Yes.
How do you want to describe her?
Erratic.
Eccentric, erratic.
Did she brag that she helped him with the murders?
Our witness says Patty said they deserved it because they're running around together.
Right.
Her only real connection to Kim was Bob, so we need to try and figure out whether or not she could have helped Bob or had a reason to do this on her own.
She kind of puts herself right in the middle of it all.
Okay, she's more of a unknown. Some people in town even suggested that Kim's sons might have been suspects. There has never been any evidence of that, and all that does is hurt our ability to try and find out who the real killer is. The clock is ticking, and it's time to get going. This case is unique because we're going to meet the family members of two different victims.
Hi there.
How are y'all?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Good.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good.
How old were you when your dad got murdered?
27.
What was he like?
He was wonderful. He was a good father, good husband, good grandpa. He was my best friend. I mean, sorry. He didn't deserve what he got.
Summing up, he was about the best guy you'd ever want to meet in your life. He ran a Speedway gas station here in town, and people would just stop in every morning on the way to work just to see him. He'd give his last dime to a stranger. I miss him just like it was yesterday.
There's just the two of you, two kids? Talk about your mom.
She wanted to get her degree to be an accountant and make good money to be able to support me and my brother, and she did one heck of a job doing it. Between her and Denny, they're the best people I've ever known. Now that I have two kids on my own, I get to see them, not have a grandmother. You just got to do what you got to do to make it through life. I mean, I got my two beautiful girls, so I know my mom would want me to take care of them.
How have y'all gotten along, the two families?
Well, we'd seen these boys here for years, but, you know, we get along.
Everybody's went their separate ways, so.
What's kind of a calamity that throws your two families together?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you only got one thing to talk about and it's bad, sometimes
bad.
it's not good to be around each other.
The first people to discover the bodies that Monday morning were Jamie and Jackie, who had been staying with their aunt that weekend. Okay, so how do y'all find out what happened?
Our uncle woke us up. He was getting ready to go to work, and he woke us up and said, "Your mom's not home yet." And I'd called Denny's house on Sunday. It was ringing busy all day. Well, then when I called back again on Monday, it was still ringing busy, and that's when I was like, you know, something's not right. And I was like, just take us over to Denny's house.
We parked on the street. I remember him saying the door was locked, so I walked around back, and the back sliding glass is open about 3 inches or so, which was unusual because Denny never left that door open. I walked in, and that's when I seen them both laying there on the floor.
My mom was reaching out, grabbing onto Denny's pants leg as she died. That is like a photographic memory. I remember all of it.
Anyone can see that this crime has been devastating for the family. And from early on, Jamie and Jackie in particular have always thought that Bob's a potential suspect.
I wanted to do my own vigilante justice, but Eric won't let me.
It's pretty heartbreaking that you don't just have one family, but two devastated by this horrible crime. Patience, just a little bit. Okay, I'm so sorry. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you guys.
You're very welcome.
This has been a long haul.
We need to try and find the answers this week, not to just solve this case, but to try and heal and bring two different families together again.
We're in Greenville, Ohio, investigating the 1997 double murder of Kim Steffen and Dennis Young. The rumor around town that Kim's sons murdered their own mother and Dennis is outrageous and unfounded.
I kind of thought maybe the boys were involved somehow because they seemed so unemotional about the whole thing. I don't know. I thought maybe that everybody was looking in the wrong direction.
I've never really thought it was Bob Stephan. I've always thought that those boys had something to do with it.
Okay.
The younger one talking about how he wanted to blow Bob away. He has some anger then, and he's got a lot of anger now.
We still need to eliminate any possibility that two young boys could commit this murder. Re-examining the crime scene is going to offer up some clues to that. Kim and Denny were seen out at local bars on that Saturday, as late as 1:30 a.m. We believe they left together in Dennis's car to head back to Dennis's house. More than 24 hours later, they were found dead. We need to determine what happened inside that house and how our killer or our killers executed the crime.
Morning.
Hello, gentlemen.
How's it going?
Good. You ready?
What's up, Eric? How are you?
Good.
We know it all started in the back, so how about if we head back there?
Sounds good. We're entering the rear of the residence where we know that the telephone box, the wires had been cut.
One of the first unusual things discovered is that the phone wires on the outside of the house were deliberately cut, potentially before the killer even entered the house.
They were cut here, both the telephone and the cable.
It tells you whoever did this really thought out what they were going to do next and wanted to eliminate the possibility of anybody being able to call for help. We know that this back slider had been pried open. That's our point of entry.
Are those hard to pry open?
No, it's like you can pop them. It's one of the biggest point of entries in any burglary.
Really?
Is a slider. After the killer entered through the back door, they passed through a small den-type area into the hallway, passing the kitchen and the guest bedroom.
This would have been the spare bedroom where the gun cabinet was located. The gun cabinet would have been right here. We do know that there was a firearm missing from that cabinet.
You can't see that gun cabinet from here.
No.
Not unless you go in the room where y'all are.
A killer with this much premeditation usually isn't going to show up without a weapon. But a smart killer might have seen Dennis's guns and realized one of those would be untraceable to them.
A 22 is not going to be as loud as a higher caliber gun. That may have been one of the reasons why he chose the 22 versus some other larger weapon.
Now, one of the things that did happen in here, the person took the gun right out of the cabinet and literally just put it right into the pillow and did a test fire just to make sure it would even work.
So there was a bed in that room with a pillow on it, and he just used that pillow?
Correct. It had a bullet hole through it. And then right by you is your thermostat, which is also one of the things that we know was turned up to about 90 degrees. The temperature in a room can affect the decomposition rates of a body. So one theory to explain the temperature set on the thermostat is that our killer might have thought they knew enough about forensics, cranking the heat, thinking they would confuse investigators to the time of death. One of the first things that people did notice the minute they walked in the house was just the amount of heat going through here. Although it is wintertime, 90's a bit hot. Now, if we move into this front area.
Okay.
In this area here is where the bodies were discovered by Kim's boys. Denny would have been laying this way. Kim would have been laying this way, her head on his leg.
While the medical examiner was not able to determine a specific time of death, the fact that both victims were found in the living room with their coats still on leads us to believe that they were shot upon entry after returning home Saturday night shortly after 1:30 in the morning. And if you add everything we know together, you can try to recreate potentially what happened that night. Logical place for our suspect to be is in the living room where he can watch through that window. Dennis and Kim come home. They park the car in the garage. They come through the laundry room, which leads into the living room. They still have their coats on. So now you guys walk in. Here comes our suspect around the corner. You're stunned. Dennis gets shot. Shot again. Collapses onto the dining room floor. Now, Kim.
First shot, second shot, the last shot.
Your lungs have been hit, internal organs. You are filling up with blood. It's getting hard to breathe. You either choke or do a very hard cough. Blood goes onto this box and the plant. Now, Dennis is not deceased either, though. But now here's the deal. Our gun no longer has any cartridges left in it. It's a 6-shot. Our suspect goes to the kitchen. where he gets a knife. Comes back where Dennis is lying on the ground right by the dining room table, cuts his throat, and then on the other side does a lot more stab-type wounds. What you're not getting is you're not getting a lot of arterial spraying like you would get from cutting those major arteries. So that's telling you the heartbeat is really slowing down, and so is the blood flow through your body.
Which is why you think the gunshots happened first.
Yes.
Otherwise it'd be more forceful.
So Kim crawls over to Dennis's leg where she rests her head on him, and the last thing she does is actually get a pretty good grip on his pant leg. Suspect walks into the kitchen, puts the knife in the sink, rinses it off, walks by, turns the thermostat up to about 90, and left the residence, taking the revolver with him. The forensic evidence tested in this case, even the knife, was inconclusive except for the victim's DNA. I've seen murders performed by children or teenagers. They're messy, they're rushed, and not so methodically planned. And here we have a crime where every single step, from entry to weapon to ambush to exit, were thought out and planned to perfection. This is not a murder committed by children. This is an intelligent and methodical murderer.
In 1997, Kim Steffen and Denny Young were ambushed and shot to death in Denny's home. Our goal is to try and piece together all of the events that led up to the murder.
We're talking about that old 97 case.
That's what it's about, the murder?
Yep. Beginning with the status of the relationship between Kim and Bob at that time.
Hi, how you doing? This is Derek Phelan.
There are over 90 people to talk to. With a cold case, you can read all the case file you want.
All right, who lives here?
Mr.
John Thompson?
Yeah.
It's very important to be able to make contact with these people. Everything's just kind of words until you sit there face to face with somebody.
Kim said he's crazy. She's scared to death of him.
Did you hear that from someone else, or did Kim actually tell you that?
Directly from her.
She didn't like the way he treated the boys. She talked about the bruises and being slapped around.
As far away from him as possible. The following day, he accused her of screwing around on him. He's waving a gun around, telling her he's going to kill her and her kids if she leaves. That's what she told us directly.
Okay.
Said they'd burn everything she owns if she left that house.
Okay. Did you hear that, or just Kim told you that?
Kim told us that.
Okay.
Then he had the telephone wires unhooked from the home, disabled the car where she couldn't sneak out and get in the car, and said she couldn't have no contact with the outside world.
Okay, how do you know that? Out of whose mouth did you get that information? She's restricted to the house.
Kim.
Okay, what'd she tell you? What'd she say?
He said if we leave, he's going to kill us.
Shane remembers pretty much everything right off the top of his head, which to me is a good indication that he is being truthful.
Shane, I can't thank you enough. Thanks. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you. Look at this. All these things that he told us that are straight out of Kim's mouth that he can testify to. Freaking fantastic. By all accounts, Kim was justified in fearing Bob after she filed for the divorce in '96. But we also need to try and figure out what Bob was thinking back then.
Hey, are you Deanna? I'm Detective Eric Curl at Greenville Police.
All of Bob's friends back then pretty much go back to the social clubs and places they all hung out at back then. Deanna Young was a bartender at the American Legion where Bob went all the time.
Sometimes he would come in and would just be quiet, and then the next time he would come in, he would get drunk and carry on and on and on and talk when he was angry and bitter. He was just a man in a bar drinking, trying to get over his woman problems. I've seen that a lot.
I'm going to jog your memory. And he told me that several times he went past
her house 2 or 3 times to look and see whose car was there. This is true. It was around the time that he told me that he was thinking about committing suicide. He said he had a gun just sitting there loaded up to his head.
So Bob told you that. Sounds kind of bad.
I just remember sitting in the truck with him, and he said something about if he found him, he was going to shoot him.
What did you think when he said that?
I just thought, he was upset because he still loved her.
Bob's anger and jealousy about the divorce are very strong motives, but we also need to know what he was thinking on the night of the murder. One of the few people who did see Bob that night was the person Bob had the blind date with, who Patty Burton set up, whose name was Dana.
How did you know Patty?
I took care of her husband.
Okay.
I was a nurse at Good Sam at that time.
Okay. So she arranges a date with Bob Steffen, right?
And I told her I would go if she went along, so she went along with us. He didn't say a whole lot. Patty talked a lot more than he did.
Okay.
We went to Ginghamsburg Church. We also went to the barn for just a little bit, and then I had to come home because I was working the next day.
Till the last time you see Bob, it's about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and he's driving off with Patty.
Right.
What Bob did when that blind date ended is one of the biggest mysteries in this case.
I left Patty's house approximately 8:30. I drove by Kim's house on the way into town. Didn't see a car there. I went around the block and went out to the lease.
And then he left and went out to see if his brother was home, and then he just meandered back home to his house down back country roads. When you look at it, it's not really an alibi at all. We need to know where he was, but the only time he did anything with the witness was at the bar. The question would be when he's talking to our bartender for those 2 hours where he's drinking and...
David Lerner is passed away.
Who's David Lerner?
He was a bartender.
No, he's not the bartender that
Yeah,
night.
he is.
That's bad. Without that bartender, we do not have anyone that can tell us what Bob was thinking and how he was acting in the hours preceding the murder. Can you think of another way to get around that?
There's other bartenders.
That night?
No.
We need that night because this sets the scenario for the cascading of dominoes.
That might have been it.
Man, that's, oh, wow. Our investigation of Bob Steffen has stalled.
This is Derek Fell.
Hi.
You helping me?
Nice to meet you.
But there is another witness.
Where do you want me? Right there in the orange chair. All right.
An informant who came forward several years ago after a conversation with Patty Burton.
I didn't know anything about the murders. I didn't know anything about these people.
So who was all there that night when that...
It was Scott, me, and Patty.
Is that the first time you met Patty?
It was. I was warned about her prior to meeting her.
How was you warned?
I was told to avoid her, and she was the one that killed those people. And I didn't believe it. But then when I actually met her, she came over, we was all sitting around smoking weed, and the conversation came up, and I was like, no, you're just joking, like whatever. And she goes, no, I did it, and that bitch got what she deserved.
You're talking about the murders of Dennis and...
Yeah, I remember that coming out of the conversation, and the fact that she was adamant about doing it. And I believed her when it came out of her mouth.
I don't know why you would say you were behind a murder. Why would Patty put herself in the middle of this? It doesn't make any sense. Maybe the other witness who was with our informant that same night can shed some light on this.
There's Scott, I think. I'm in contact. You Scott? All right. Patty would have been your what?
She was married to my uncle, John.
Do you remember ever being in a conversation and Patty starts to make some disclosures about this homicide?
Patty insinuated she did it, but she never said she did it. Basically, all that was really said was, you know how it is, Scott. She just said, if you want something done, do it yourself. If you want
That could have been a reference to Bob, too, right? If she'd known Bob did it, does that make sense to you?
I never heard no reference to Bob. I know Patty liked him an awful lot, but I don't remember any reference to Bob any of the times we talked about the killings.
Scott's statement doesn't exactly match, but there's no reason why our informant would make all this up.
Hopefully we'll find her in a condition that she can talk.
The problem is there's no real true motive for why Patty would kill Kim and Denny, who never did anything to her. Maybe if we can surprise Patty at her house, we can catch her off guard and get some final true answers.
See, that house right there is hers, so I was hoping this drive right here maybe.
Yeah, nobody meeting us with guns in their hands, so far we're all right. I went to church Sunday, so if we go to meet the Maker, I'll say a prayer for you.
Yeah.
That house right over there is hers?
Yeah.
How you doing, you Patty? Wonder if you had some time to talk with us here today.
Really, there ain't nothing I can tell you.
They've tried to interview Patty on numerous occasions, and she becomes very defensive. Here, we need just some small details. We just want to go over the story. Can we go in the car and sit down and talk? Because I got to look at my notes.
Go ahead and have a seat up in front of the car there. It's a nice car, nice and comfortable.
Our strategy was basically to be very friendly to her and get her into the car and talk to her.
What do you want to know? I ain't got nothing to hide.
They got her in the car.
I heard that your car was at Lori's. And she said, did you know that the police want to talk to me?
Uh-oh.
Do you ever remember being in a house with Scott? And maybe you were talking a little bit about this incident? Would you have ever made a comment that maybe A, she got what she deserved, being Kim?
No.
You wouldn't have said that?
No.
And B, maybe that if you would do this, do it by yourself?
No.
Let me ask you this, okay?
Yeah.
Would you have ever said, maybe it's the marijuana talking, that you were involved with this murder?
No.
Okay.
Scott Myers is a liar.
It could be. I'm not saying he's honest. Okay?
He's not.
And that's why we're coming to talking to you. Just clear some stuff up here, okay?
He's the one that started all this.
Okay. How did you meet Bob?
I met Bob at the Eagles.
At the Eagles.
Found out they did little handyman jobs.
What'd you think of Kim?
I thought she was a little bit flighty because of her relationship with Denny.
So you meet Bob in the process of being divorced, right? And then you set him up with Dana.
Yep. He said, all I want in my life, he says, is a good, decent woman that won't run around on me. And he said, do you know anybody? I said, actually, I do. Me and him smoked a joint. And so I fixed him up with Dana.
Bob comes over here because Dana doesn't want to go by herself, right? Is that how this night starts off?
No, I don't know if he picked her up at her house. They didn't go in my car. I didn't go.
No? Did Dana, because I thought Dana was a little bit apprehensive about going by herself.
All I can tell you is that they went out.
Did you go with him to church?
No.
Did you go to eat with him later?
No.
You didn't?
No, they went.
She did go with them, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is crazy. So is she trying to act like the night never happened?
Did you go with him to church?
No.
Did you go to eat with him later?
No.
You didn't?
No, they went.
She did go with them, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is crazy. So is she trying to act like the night never happened? Both Dana and Bob say that Patty was on that blind date. So I don't know if Patty's lying about that or she just really doesn't remember.
She did.
So, Bob, does he come back here? Do you remember that after the date?
I think we talked about it later. We probably smoked pot.
After the date?
Probably.
Okay.
And he probably said, Patty, you fixed me up with a 9.
Were you ever romantically?
No, never. I didn't want him. Hell, he's close to my son's age.
Yeah, I understand that.
Really, I shouldn't even be talking to you.
Sure you should. We need your help. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I understand that. They ain't
I'm not
nothing I
here.
can help you with. I don't know, no more than you know. I met Bob at the Eagles. I smoked a little bit of pot with him, and that's as far as it went. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
That flat out wore me out.
You know, I just don't think she's got the mental...
Could never keep her on track, save your life.
What'd you think?
I think she smoked so much dope, she doesn't know what the truth is.
I think she's trying to pull herself away from the whole thing.
This incident with the date, I don't know why she'd lie about it.
Is she a party? Is she a co-defendant? Because that interview doesn't help us. I don't know if she has knowledge, if she's minimizing, or she's just smoking dope so much her brain is fried. Talking to Patty really wasn't very helpful, and we have nothing else concrete to show that she was involved in these murders. Our concern is that every moment we spend trying to figure out if Patty's involved takes away our focus on whether or not Bob had anything to do with this. So there's the case with Patty. Maybe Bob Steffen will say something on her.
How you gonna do Bob? You gonna bring him in? I would not go to his house. I'm telling you that flat out.
Why?
There's no way I'm gonna pull in that driveway.
What do you think, calling him, and you think he's going to come in from calling him?
I don't know.
Heck no.
But my whole point is, he knows we're in town, he knows what we're driving, and as soon as you pull in that driveway.
You think he'll start shooting? It feels like we've talked to everyone in this whole dang town, but until we figure out how to approach Bob, we have to talk to every witness and look for any little piece that we might have missed to see if he was involved or not, and if he was, how was he involved. Did we talk to the landlord? Is he still alive?
Forrest Pittman?
Yeah.
He's alive.
Eric, I'm looking at my old notes. Once upon a time, Eric said that Kim came crying to the landlord.
Him, that she needed a place to
saying
live.
she needed a place to live. We need to add Forrest Pittman to the list.
Is Forrest Pittman live there still?
He does.
Forrest?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Bob and Kim Steffen?
Yes, I knew them very well. He was my handyman. If I needed something repaired at one of the properties, I called him. He did a good job for me when I needed the job done. One day, Kim came to my office and she told me she needed a rental place because she was leaving him. I put her in this house, and she was living there when, this happened.
After Kim filed for divorce, she rented a house from Forrest Pittman where she lived right up until the time of the murders. What's interesting is that Bob was the handyman for Forrest.
When I was getting that house ready to rent, after this all came down in the furnace room, the outside vent from the furnace was disconnected. The gases that should be going outside were not. This wasn't something that was an accident, Somebody had taken that off. I suspected that Bob Steffens had probably disconnected that to try to fixate her and her children.
No one had rented it in between murder and when you discover this.
Well, I wasn't allowed to,
Normally, a burning furnace creates carbon monoxide, which travels through the flue into the chimney and out the house. When the flue is separated, as Forrest describes, that carbon monoxide would escape the furnace, filling a small home to lethal levels very quickly.
You've been very, very, very helpful, sir. Thank you so much. Excellent. Don't you think?
I think it's very, very good.
You know what else is good about that, Eric? It's something your DA has never heard.
Nope.
Do you realize how big this is? After interviewing all the witnesses in this case, the only person left to question is Bob Steffen. It seems like it might be too dangerous to try and approach him face to face, but talking to him could be crucial, so we have to try.
Hello?
Hi, Bob.
Yeah?
My name is Steve Spingola, and I'm up here working with the Greenville, Ohio Police Department, taking a look at a cold case that involved your ex-wife. Would you be willing to sit down, sir, and talk to me a little bit about this case?
Bob?
Hello?
Is it still ticking?
Yeah, he hung up. Wanna try it again?
Yeah.
Hello? We are not available now.
I think that was a no. What do you think, Eric?
I think that was about as big a no as you can get. Wow.
What are y'all's thoughts now on whether or not Patty Burton should still be on the suspect board?
I don't believe she did this.
I think she may have said crazy statements at times, but I don't think she was a key player in it at all.
Steve?
She doesn't have the skill set to commit this.
Between inconsistencies about what Patty said about the murders, Patty's state of mind, and the fact that there is no physical evidence linking Patty to the murders, not only is there not really a strong case against Patty, there is no case at all. Look at this board with all the things against Bob Steffen. All these people have little pieces of the story to add to our case. The evidence shows that Bob Steffen was abusive to both Kim and her boys and even reportedly made threats with firearms.
She talked about the bruises and being slapped around.
Bob had a motive. When Kim left him, he was enraged and jealous, and according to our witnesses, there were threats being made.
He's waving a gun around, telling her he's going to kill her and her kids if she leaves.
Bob has no alibi, and he even admitted to driving by Kim's home that night. And finally, we have evidence that Kim's furnace was tampered with in the days before the murder. The same apartment where Bob served as the handyman. In this case, it feels like a very intelligent killer methodically cut the phone lines and was lying in wait for Kim and Dennis. Are you ready to take it to your DA?
As excited as I've ever been on it.
We wish y'all luck. The next day, Eric and I spend the morning meeting with the DA. He listens to everything, all the evidence and all the statements to help make the decision. Now it's time to tell the family what he's decided. You know what you're going to tell them, Eric?
Yes.
Before we tell what the DA has decided, there is something we need to address. This time, Denny's son, Dennis, is joining us. Like some of the other people in town, we've heard that he also suspects Jackie and Jamie in these murders. So we just want to talk to him before the boys show up because we want him to spread the word that they had absolutely nothing to do with this.
Hi, Eric.
How we doing?
Good. Hi, Yolanda.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay. It has been a long several days. Just on this side, there's been accusations. Why aren't we looking at the boys?
The crime scene is very sophisticated and really thought out. Not what a 12 or 15-year-old would do. It would be so sloppy.
Yeah.
Those boys would have wanted to kill Bob, not their own mother, and certainly not Dennis.
Out of the 16 pages that we presented to the prosecutor, there's no evidence at all that a child committed this crime.
So if y'all hear that from your people anymore, tell them to stop. It's ridiculous.
Yes, I don't believe that.
Okay?
Yeah, I don't
it's
believe
ridiculous.
that at all. Yeah.
So they're downstairs waiting to hear just like y'all are. These boys have been through so much in their lifetime, and can you imagine how good it feels for Eric to be able to share with them what has happened?
Come have a seat.
We presented what we found to Kelly Ornsby. He is more optimistic than I've ever seen him before, and as expected, I knew that he was not going to give an immediate response. He's going to review what we have.
He said to tell you he is encouraged. He just wants to read it all so he knows it like Eric does. It's the furthest progress it's ever been in all these years. The only thing I would tell y'all is once he's read it all in a couple of weeks, all of you need to pick up the phone and call him and tell him you're waiting to hear. You're waiting to hear, you're waiting to hear.
Did you guys talk to Bob?
He tried.
Tried?
He's not a good man at all.
No.
We lived with him for long enough to tell.
Joy, you okay?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I'm okay.
You okay?
That's a good cry, right?
Yeah.
It's a good cry, okay? Because it's all good.
Hey guys, I'm Dennis. So last time I met you guys, you were 12 and 15, so it's been a long time. Nice to see you. I see you guys growing up well, huh? I want to see resolve. You know, everyone does in something like this. And I know there'll be resolved someday. Somehow there will be resolved.
Be patient just a little bit longer, okay? Call in about 10 days, you call that DA, okay?
This is the first time in 17 years there's been actual hope. I mean, it's been so long, I just kind of thought nothing was really even going to happen, and completely changed my outlook after today.
Maybe we'll see each other again shortly.
I'm sure we will.
We hope the DA will move forward with this case very soon. Until then, we hope that all the hard work that Eric and his team have done for the last 17 years will provide them the peace and unity that their families need to keep going. I think the sad thing about this case is that our victim was 67, and he was a nice, sweet man who was brutally murdered 8 years ago.
He was very thoughtful. So none of this makes sense to me.
People in Bridgeport were shocked by Kyle Smith's murder because no one could imagine anyone wanting to harm him, and very little crime happens in this small, rural West Virginia town.
Well, you know, he had this journal that he kept. It was kind of interesting because literally Kyle Smith would write everything about his day down. He would write like the temperature that it was, if he went shopping, where he went shopping, how much he spent.
You could tell reading his diary that he was kind of a lonely guy because when people would come by and visit him or bring him a six-pack of beer, he would write it down. Police believe that Kyle Smith was actually writing in his journal and stopped in the middle of a sentence right before he was viciously murdered with multiple weapons.
It is an overkill to the max.
You would think to be that mad, is it over a woman? Is it over some big inheritance?
This case has a lot of challenges. The DNA evidence collected at the crime scene is inconclusive, and the victim kept mostly to himself, so there's not a lot of witnesses to talk to.
But I think what we have to do is go through his journal and then get to who in the world could have been that mad that day.
Mm-hmm. This is a case where our best witness could very well be the victim himself.
It has been 16 years and still no answers.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
There are so many cold cases out there just waiting to be solved.
The crime scene ultimately tells the story of the murder.
We want to bring justice to these victims.
Man, this feels like snow weather, girlie.
Can throw snowballs at you.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Troy.
Troy, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for inviting us. First time in West Virginia.
Thank you for coming.
Do y'all have very many unsolved murder cases?
Just one.
This is it?
This was really our first homicide, and it
Okay.
kind of caught us off guard. The community at first was, they were scared. Prior to this, a lot of people wouldn't lock their cars. A lot of people would leave their garage doors, things like that open because they felt so safe. It is a tough case, but putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, they can hopefully, be able to take everything and make this work.
You got a place for us to work?
Yeah, right in there.
Mr. Alan Brown.
Hi, Alan Brown. Gary Weaver, nice to meet you.
Jerry? Troy. The guys that I'm going to work with don't have a lot of experience in doing homicides. So the key in this, I think, will be for me to help them maximize the information they can get out of the few witnesses they have.
Why don't you start from the beginning and tell us about your victim?
Well, Kyle Smith, he was single.
So he had no children, he had no wife.
No.
What did he do for a profession?
He used to deliver newspapers at night. We would always see him on midnight shift because he would drive on the wrong side of the road, just handing out the papers.
Right.
If you come up on him, he wouldn't move. You had to go around him.
Even the cops?
Even the cops, yeah.
So why don't you tell us about your case?
In July of 2006, our patrol officers got called for what someone thought was a suicide. They walked in through the front door and they could see blood spatter all over the walls, and we saw our victim laying there on a couch. There was severe trauma to his head and his arms and his chest. The head trauma was extremely brutal, and then they saw a stab wound, so they immediately pulled out of the house and contacted us. When we looked at the house, we didn't find a knife or anything. While we were looking, we did notice sandstone rock. The rock had done some damage, but just looking at it, you could tell this is more damage than what a rock would do. So we started searching everything, and we found this blanket, and they opened it up, and there was the pruning shears.
It was later discovered that the handles to these pruning shears were missing. But the metal piece found wrapped in this blanket matched several of the blunt force trauma wounds that were found all over Kyle's head and body.
When we looked at the house, we saw there was no forced entry. Even though it was a mess, you could tell that, the house hadn't really been ransacked. And we did DNA testing. Everything has come back to our victim. One of the things that was real key to us that we found at the scene was a journal.
The lack of any struggle or forced entry told the police that the suspect had to be someone Kyle knew. So as investigators looked through Kyle's journal, they focused on everyone that he mentioned until they were able to eliminate everyone but two. Okay, y'all want to start working on our suspect board? Carl, KB, Kyle.
His cousin, KB, was the one that originally found the body.
The police believe that Kyle was murdered on the night of Tuesday, July the 11th, but his body wasn't reported until the next morning when it was discovered by his cousin, KB. KB claims he was dropping by to thank Kyle for a birthday card.
KB said that he came and he went in the back door and saw him laying there. And he left and went about a block away to City Fire Department and said, hey, I think my cousin shot himself.
Shot himself?
Yeah, and he is not being very cooperative with us, and it hasn't really been since the initial interviews.
Anyone who discovers a murdered victim is almost always a suspect right away, and then maybe they can be cleared. But because KB has refused to talk to police over the years, it's been impossible to establish his alibi and clear him. On the night of the murder, he's not far from the area. The night before the discovery, KB was near the victim's house at a local gas station, where he was having a fight with his son, Carl.
Carl E. Kyle.
And it gets confusing with the names.
Our victim's name was Kyle Smith. He was found deceased by his cousin, KB Kyle. And KB Kyle's son was named Carl Kyle. So you have a lot of K's going on in this case.
The night of the murder, we know that KB met his son, Carl, at a gas station and put gas in Carl's car.
Okay, just 10 minutes from the scene.
He had been at the house.
At the house, July the 8th?
Yeah. When we reviewed the journal, we found out that 3 days before and the night of the murder, Carl spent most of the day over at Kyle's house, and that he had borrowed $150 off of him. Going back through the journal, we found a couple other places where recently he had been over at the house borrowing money. How we originally got onto him
Yeah.
It is very strange, too. While we were processing the crime scene, we noticed Carl just walking around the parking lot. He said, I'm looking for my dad. We said, who's your dad? And he said, KB. Someone had told him that, and we had talked with KB. We asked him, what were you doing last night? And he goes, I have a witness.
Just like that?
Yeah, doesn't ask anything at all about what we're doing there, what has happened, or anything.
Generally, when family members come back to a crime scene and they realize someone they love has been murdered, they're freaking out. They're crying, they're asking questions, they're not believing it. And Carl Kyle acted in none of those ways, which is very unusual.
We said, what were you doing? He said, I was at home with my girlfriend all night. He said, I need to know where my dad is. And that's all he worried about was his dad.
Both Carl and his dad, KB, showed really strange behavior after the murder. The question is, does the evidence reveal that either of them had any motive to kill Kyle?
The victim's journal is like he's talking from the grave.
Kyle Smith didn't let a lot of people come into his world, but we're going to have to learn everything that we can about him to try and figure out what happened. His nieces, Melinda and Elisa, were close to Kyle throughout his life, and we're excited to talk to them, to listen to stories they have to say about him. They've been thinking about their uncle and wondering what happened to him for the past 8 years. So describe the family for us. Who's what? Starting with your mom and your uncle.
They're brother and sister.
And then there's a cousin.
KB.
Okay.
I think Uncle Kyle and KB were like pretty good
Cousins.
friends.
We grew up, we didn't see KB that much, but we always heard his name.
Yeah, Uncle Kyle was our favorite. Uncle Kyle was a good man, gentle and kind. He had nothing, but whatever he had, he would share. He did a 100-mile route every night delivering newspaper bundles, and he would stop and pick up box turtles for us kids.
Oh God, you love that.
And save them.
Not only he was picking them up for us, but he didn't want to run them over.
He was just an easy person to be around. I can still hear his laugh and see his smile. For a man who didn't have anything, he certainly tried to be generous.
He was very generous. If anybody needed anything, he would give it to them.
Yeah. He was the most undeserving person to die like that.
Yeah.
He would not have hurt anybody or anything. And in fact, we could just picture whoever was there, if an argument started up, we could hear him saying, we don't have to get all in a fuss here, let's just talk this out. He would try to have made peace. Yeah, it was sad to lose him, but to think that that's the way that Uncle Kyle had to go out, that was the hard part.
Pretty unfair for everything he's ever done for everybody else.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I had my firstborn son, he said, well, Elisa, I don't have much to give for your new son. But he said, here's a quarter. And he gave me a quarter. So that was nice. You know, that sounds really stupid, but for somebody that doesn't have anything, you know. He made sure that he gave me something for our new baby. So.
I mean, y'all told some great stories. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Every time you approach a victim's family, you know that you're setting them up to possibly have their heart broken. The pressure and the stress that comes with that is hard to describe, and all you want to do is your very best to try and solve the case. Just keep thinking positive thoughts, and hopefully we can come back with some good news, we hope.
Yeah.
The actual crime scene, Kyle's house, was demolished years ago. That's a huge challenge because we need this space in order to visualize how the murder occurred. So constructing an accurate mock crime scene will be very important. If we're going to catch Kyle's murderer, we have to try to understand what they were thinking.
To figure out what happened to Kyle Smith in 2006, we need to re-examine the crime scene, which presents a challenge for us. The home where Kyle Smith was brutally murdered no longer exists, So Yolanda's put together a mock crime scene.
Hey, good morning.
How about that West Virginia weather? Thank you so much.
It is warming up. It's up to 33 now, so.
Hey, man.
Come on, guys.
Look like a little Eskimo all wrapped.
Oh my God, what a great idea.
This is our mock crime scene. Everything, I think we all agree, happened just right here on the couch.
Kyle's house was very small, and it seems like he spent most of his time on the sofa in the living room where he was found.
Based on what everyone told us, this was his area. The TV's right there. When we were talking to witnesses, they said that he would write in his journal when the 11 o'clock news would come on. So we were able to say someone showed up at his house 11 to 11:30 time frame because he quit writing in his journal. Someone comes in, I take the journal, put it down, put the pen away.
The journal's on the floor.
In this area.
To me, that would indicate that someone has come in the middle of his writing. He puts his journal away, puts his pen away, and he's in the process of visiting with the suspect.
You can rule out a robbery, obviously.
Yeah.
You can tell a lot about a suspect by the murder weapon they used. And in this case, we have 3. A rock, which we believe was used to prop open Kyle's front door, a pair of pruning shears he kept near the front door, and a knife which police believe was kept near the sofa. Because all 3 murder weapons came from the living room area, it tells us the killer didn't bring a weapon and probably didn't show up planning to kill Kyle.
Help me out.
Okay. I'll be the victim.
So, Mr. Smith is writing in his journal, doing his own thing. Person comes to visit him.
Put my pen in my pocket, and I probably set my journal down right here.
Whoever comes to see him becomes very upset. I think this person leaves in anger, but as they're leaving, instead, picks up the rock that Mr. Smith used to prop open his door to get air through his house and just comes back and just starts attacking him with this rock. He's getting defensive wounds on his arms. The rock literally crumbles into 5 pieces.
My theory is the rock was used first due to the fact that the pieces of rock don't have a lot of blood on them. They also don't have fingerprints, which isn't surprising given the porous surface of the sandstone.
So our suspect then picks up a pair of pruners.
The pruning shears were something that Kyle left right in his living room in order to be able to just go out to his yard and do his pruning.
So he grabs the shears and then started beating him. The medical examiner said that he had at least 20 strikes, mainly to the left side in this area of his head. So now we've got an awful lot of blood spraying all over these walls. But now what happens, the shears break away from the handle. Now this weapon's no longer any good.
There was a table, and there's where he kept his knife.
So the suspect grabs that knife, stabs Mr. Smith 1 time in the left side of the abdomen, and that was it.
So he basically is a very inefficient murderer. He had to get to weapon 3 to do the job with 1 stick.
Yeah. The knife is missing, so our suspect takes that. The handles to the shears are missing. You're talking about somebody who was actually logically thinking for a second.
I've done this. I gotta get away with this.
Yeah, he goes into damage control.
Whoever did this left no DNA behind and was smart enough to take the shear handles and knife, which might have had their fingerprints on them. But the crime scene still points to an unprepared and inexperienced killer who murdered suddenly when a conversation got out of hand.
What happened in that conversation that outraged this person so much to do such an overkill on this man?
We know that both suspects, the victim's cousin KB and his son Carl, frequented Kyle's home on a regular basis. But when it comes to motive, the crime scene tells us the question isn't as much who wanted Kyle dead, it's who couldn't stop themselves from killing him.
Who are we going to go see first?
I'm going to try Billy Corbin and Kerry Kaufman.
They were friends of Kyle Smith?
Yeah, they were over his house quite a bit.
It's time to start interviewing witnesses, beginning with the people that Kyle mentioned in his journal.
Did Kyle ever talk to you about KB borrowing money from him?
He's loaned me money, but I don't know if he ever loaned any money out to anybody else.
Okay. Kyle ever talked to you about KB's son borrowing money from him or complaining at all about him mooching around or anything like that?
I never brought that guy up.
Unfortunately, so far, we're not having much luck.
Yeah. Hello. I'm looking for Mr. John Black.
Right here.
We're taking a look at Kyle Smith's murder back in 2006.
I don't know nothing about it.
If you would.
Not a thing. All I know is what was read in the paper.
Do you know KB?
I know him.
Did KB ever mention to y'all that before the murder happened, he had gotten into an argument with his son?
No, never did.
We know that on the night of the murder, both Carl and KB were reportedly at an Exxon nearby arguing.
But they was having a lot of problems over money.
How do you know that?
Because he was complaining about it. I guess he had lent his son some money. He wasn't quiet about it, he talked about it every day. Which did sound like a broken record, because every day he come down there, about his son,
Did you notice that after the victim was killed, KB didn't talk about it so much anymore?
Yeah, it kind of changed his attitude about talking about it.
About Carl?
Yeah, about his son.
So why would KB stop talking about these financial problems in regards to his son right after the murder? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Black.
Alrighty.
Kyle didn't have a lot of money as far as we know, but it still makes you wonder, could these money problems have some connection to the murder?
Hello.
Sutton, this is Detective Ruthford from the Bridgeport Police Department. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Our victim, Kyle Smith, was close with much of his family, especially his nephew, Sutton.
What can you tell me about Kyle Smith? What was he like? What kind of person was he?
He was our favorite uncle. He was a good-hearted individual. He liked history, and he could tell good stories, and good humored, liked to laugh.
What can you tell me about what you remember from the time, when he was killed?
There was a church service. I was one of a few that stood up and, said something about Uncle Kyle, and right behind me was KB's son. And there was something that just struck me right then and there. He was stretched out. He had both hands behind his head. He had his legs stretched out in a smug, superior, and he had a grin on his face that was inappropriate. And I thought, that's odd. And then the next thing that seemed odd to me, KB made some nervous excuse like she couldn't go to Menard's Spaghetti House after the church service. KB and Kyle were good friends. They were close cousins. And I thought that's very odd that he would not come.
It doesn't seem like KB had a reason to kill Kyle, but that doesn't mean he's told police everything he knows about the crime. He's been uncooperative for years. As a prosecutor, though, I've seen a lot of cases where a parent suspects their child's guilt, but they'll do anything they can to cover it up, and that's just natural. You've been very, very helpful, and thank you very much for all your information.
Thank you.
Looking through Kyle's journal, it was apparent that KB visited Kyle a lot. They hung out, KB gave him rides, they exchanged birthday cards, they were really close. There's no obvious strain in their relationship at all.
Here's the notes on him. You can have these to look at.
Carl, on the other hand, never appears in Kyle's journal that whole calendar year until he suddenly starts to visit in the month before the murder. And all three of those times was to borrow money. Why did he suddenly need that money?
She's going to have all of her kids home. Our suspect's children. Michelle is Carl's ex-wife. They were divorced about a year before the murder. She's been cooperative in the past, but she's still the mother of Carl's children, so we're not sure how she's going to react.
What can you tell me about Carl?
After he and I got divorced, he was still in the kids' life for a while, and then I think his life went downhill. He started not really paying as much attention to his kids. My kids haven't seen their dad for probably 8 years now.
You're kidding.
Wow.
Yeah. But Carl, from what I understood, there was drugs, alcohol, and gambling involved in it heavily.
What happened to his chiropractor practice?
His old one? He let it run to the ground. He didn't want to work. He would not have his office open. He was always not able to pay his rent there. He wasn't able to pay his student loans. And he ended up losing that practice. So
How much did that put him in debt to declare in bankruptcy part?
I don't know, but they took $40,000 for the proceeds of the house to pay off his to satisfy that loan.
About how much was he in debt for student loans?
It's probably around 150, maybe.
Okay.
$160,000. The day that Kyle died or was killed was 2 days after Carl was notified that he owed me $15,000.
This is the child support back payment?
He called me and started screaming at me, telling me, why did I do that to him? I was messing up his life.
Did he have temper problems?
Explosive. He would be completely even killed, and then as soon as something would trip him up, or the kids would spill something or do whatever, he would just like turn on a dime and would start screaming and yelling and throwing stuff. And
So the idea of him just losing it all of a sudden wouldn't surprise you?
no, honestly, I didn't even flinch or think twice about it when they called and told me that he was the lead suspect. I told him even after all this happened, I don't know how he looked at himself in the mirror to go to bed at night, and he started laughing, and he said, you know me, I can always go to sleep.
It's not hard to imagine a situation where Carl is desperate, where he had to borrow $50 here and $150 there just to get by. Then he gets hit with the child support right before the murder. He goes to Kyle and asks for money, and Kyle says no, and with that temper, who knows what happened.
No problem. Thank you, ma'am.
She was way better than I thought she was going to be.
She was great. You're going to learn this, young detective. Ladies remember things way better than men, all right?
Hey, we're here with Alan and Kelly and Yolanda. They're going to ask you some questions first and just go from there, okay?
Okay.
When you have a murder as brutal as Kyle Smith's, it's reasonable to assume that the killer left the scene with blood on them. And that means they could have left traces of that blood in their getaway vehicle. When inspected in 2006, Carl's white Oldsmobile turned up nothing. But when investigators learned that occasionally Carl would drive his then-girlfriend Missy's maroon vehicle, they checked out that car and discovered something strange.
If you're standing there looking at that car, tell us the difference between how the driver's seat looked compared to the rest of the car seats.
The entire inside of this car was filthy. There's dirt in the carpet and dirt on all of the seats, front and rear, garbage in the car. The only seat that was clean was the driver's seat. It was freshly clean, like it had been done in just a matter of days.
Oh my God, that's huge.
Police were unable to locate any blood or determine how the seat had been cleaned. And both Missy and Carl denied any knowledge of the car seat being cleaned at all. According to Carl, he had driven only his white car that month. But Carl's coworker reported that they had seen him in the maroon car the day after the murder.
Is Carl distancing himself from the red car because he's afraid it has blood in it, or did he really, really drive the white car? So the focus today is to try and figure out which car he really used.
Now, Kimberly was the one that saw the car there first that morning.
When she got there, he was there early that day, and she actually asked him, is that your maroon car? How many cars do you have? Kim lives in a whole nother state, 2 hours away, and I'm worried she's not going to remember something as simple as what color car Carl drove that day. But if she does, it'll definitely make it worth the trip. So the first question out of the barrel here is, when you pull in and you see that burgundy car in the parking lot, is he in it?
He was just getting out, if I can recall right, because we all walked in together.
Okay.
So he was there. I don't know how long before I got there.
But he was already in the parking lot in that car. And so that struck you odd?
Yeah, because like I said, he was always coming in late. Like he was always straggling.
In your statement, you say that Kyle had driven a burgundy vehicle to work on 7/12 of 06 with damage to the front passenger side in West Virginia plates. You got right down to the plates.
It must be because I was younger.
But that car stood out to you because it wasn't the one that you normally saw.
Right.
Shortly after the murder, the detective says it looked like the seat had been cleaned. That makes us wonder if it was cleaned the morning after the murder. It's one of those, you think?
Right there.
After living with Missy and her children for about 2 years, Carl and Missy split soon after the murder.
Missy, hop in the front.
She talked to police several times after the murder, but the answers she gave were always vague and inconsistent. Do you remember what kind of car you were driving back then?
I had an Oldsmobile Alero.
Was it maroon?
Yeah.
And he was driving?
He was driving a white piece of crap.
Okay.
Because he had taken my car to work the day, supposedly, that all this rusted out, and I had the white piece of crap.
And how do you know that?
Because I remember Nina was sick, and I had to take Nina to the doctor up there at East Point, and I remember driving that white piece of crap.
Missy has always been Carl's alibi, and in his written statement, he says on the night of the murder he had dinner with Missy. Then he went to meet his dad at the Exxon, and he was back home in bed with Missy at 11. If Carl said that he came home that night and had dinner with you and the kids...
No, he didn't. He was never there for dinner with me and the kids. I was asleep when he got home. He woke me up.
Do you remember the time?
I'd say he probably came home after midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning.
The receipt from the Exxon for the gas being put in the car is 10:27 p.m. So we're talking 11:30, a 2-hour gap in there where, am I hearing you right, you have no idea where he is. Is that correct?
Yeah.
This is huge. The 2-hour gap that Missy describes is more than enough time to travel the 11 minutes from the Exxon to Kyle's home, commit the murder, and then travel the 8 minutes to where Carl lived with Missy. Not only that, it's right in the window where we suspect that Kyle was killed sometime around the 11 o'clock news.
I knew when he got home from work that night he didn't have the shirt. Because I asked him, where's that yellow shirt?
So the yellow shirt went missing?
Yeah, I remember him leaving the house in that yellow shirt.
For work that day?
Mm-hmm.
And you never saw the yellow shirt again after the Exxon night?
Not that I remember now, no.
This is the beautiful thing about cold cases. You have somebody like Missy who used to be too scared and too confused at the time of the murder, comes back today thinking clearly. And what she has to say not only undercuts Carl's alibi, it shows how odd Carl was acting when he finally got home that night. I never like to say jackpot with witnesses or evidence because that's being greedy. We'd like to just settle for little nuggets, right?
Yeah.
She was a freaking jackpot. There's little reason to believe that KB had the motive to commit this murder, but he still might know a whole lot more about it.
So we're going to start with him right from the very beginning.
Well, we have to hit him simultaneous with them hitting Carl at 9:15. It's time to approach KB, but to make sure he doesn't tip off Carl, we've decided to split up. Gary, Yolanda, and Alan are going to go after Carl. At the same time, we're joining Detective Brian Kimmerer to confront KB at the McDonald's where he has coffee every morning after church. We're shooting for the one closest to the church first.
Right.
Y'all be careful driving and let us know how it goes as soon as you get through.
All right. So all three of us aren't going into the McDonald's, are we?
Yeah, we are. But I'm just going to stand back and watch y'all. Because y'all look like cops.
Yeah, we
I
do.
don't.
There's a lot of gray-haired men in there. Is that KB right there with his back towards us?
Might be. Last year, our team worked with the Aurora Police Department to investigate the murder of Carolyn Jansen.
It appears to be a human body.
Carolyn's roommate, J.D. Harrington, was charged with that murder. The Arapahoe County DA's office hopes to take that case to trial this year.
Today is the day that we meet with our two suspects, KB Kyle and his son Carl Kyle, about the murder of their cousin Kyle Smith.
Is that KB right there with his back towards us?
Might be.
Kelly is with Troy and Brian at the McDonald's where KB eats breakfast every morning.
One of these doors right here.
And I'm with Alan and Gary, who are about to pay Carl a visit.
Hey, Carl. Hey, pretty good.
Want to see if we can
kind of talk with you for a couple minutes?
I really don't know if I can say anything new to you guys that you don't already have. But if you give me a minute, let me use the restroom.
Sure.
I'll contemplate that thought.
Okay.
Hello.
Mr. Kyle? Come outside and talk to me real quick if you want to, so we want to talk in front of all kinds of people. I'm Brian Cameron. Nice to meet you.
What do you do?
I work for the city of Bridgeport. No, I just wanted to talk to you. I didn't want to interrupt all the social Saturday here. I think you got a little bit of idea, but I don't want to say everything in front of anybody here. So let's go out here to the car if you don't mind. It'd be better. That way we can figure everything out, all right?
I wouldn't stand right here.
Well, let's go back. We don't want to... It's kind of chilly out here.
I don't have any discussion.
Well, we want to know what you got, what kind of information you do
I
have.
don't have any information about anything.
I understand, sir. I understand.
Hey, I don't want to be bothering people.
Mr. Kyle, you don't want to help us figure out what happened to your
We
cousin?
have a job to do, buddy.
Don't you want to help us
You
figure
don't
out?
want to figure out what happened.
Yes, sir, we
Yes,
do.
yes, we do. And we know you know what
He was your
we're talking
cousin and you
about.
cared about him.
Why do you not want to help us solve a murder?
KB is not going to talk to us. He wasn't going to talk to us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just hope that Alan and Gary and Yolanda are having a whole lot better luck with Carl.
You guys want a water?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Carl was very apprehensive. You know, he was in the bathroom for an extended period of time. Once he came out, he then said, yeah, he would talk to us.
Tell me about Kyle Smith.
Really didn't have a lot of communications with them.
But right prior to his death, I mean, I know that you'd been over there a couple times as early as the 8th, which was I think Saturday.
Yeah, that was actually the last.
And your reasoning for stopping by, you borrowed some money from him.
I
Right?
borrowed some money from him.
How much altogether did you borrow from him?
$90 or so, because my water was going to be shut off.
Right.
And then I needed to borrow some extra money because of I had spent some money on some video machines.
Were you gambling a lot back then?
No, I just had one day when I lost, and then I was like, shit, I need a little bit of cash.
And that would be when you went to Kyle on the 8th and borrowed the 150.
The 150, yes.
Okay.
When police first talked to Carl, he was quick to defend himself and say he had an alibi for the night of the murder. That alibi is that he had dinner with his girlfriend, met his father at an Exxon to get some gas, and then went home to bed.
You'd said in your statement that you called your
I
dad.
called my dad that night because I needed to borrow some gas when I didn't get to work.
And what vehicle do you drive the next day to work?
The wait one, put the gas in.
But Melissa and the lady employee at the chiropractic clinic said you were using a maroon car that morning.
That's not what I remember. I was in a white car
The next day.
the next day.
So, okay, so you go to work the next day and the first person that tells you about his death is going to be
Sandra Davis.
Sandra.
Yes.
Okay, what does she tell you?
She says to me, she gets on the phone, she says, I got to tell you that Kyle's dead. The dad found Kyle dead. I said, well, did he have a heart attack?
Right.
And I remember distinctly, she goes, no, something happened to him. I think he was murdered.
Carl has always stated that he first learned of Kyle's death from KB's friend Sandra. But in those statements, he reported that Sandra had said that Kyle had died and may have committed suicide or been killed, but never specifically that he was murdered. Most people remember the moment they learn that a relative is dead, let alone murdered. So why does he keep changing that story?
I drove straight to the scene.
Being Kyle's house.
I was told I need to speak with Detective Lindley. He says, your cousin was murdered. I said, well, I don't know what else to say. I said, well, I have an alibi. I wasn't here. Being funny.
Without being funny?
No, I'm thinking that I'm thinking that he's asking me these questions and I'm answering as if this is just a joke. If I had realized what was going on, I would have never answered that stupid question with that stupid answer.
But you know the gravity of the situation because you've already been told he's murdered.
I understand that he's dead, but I don't know why he's asking me these questions.
All right.
That's all I have.
Appreciate you inviting us into your home. Carl's story is very inconsistent. It doesn't fit. I mean, he's not keeping his story together. He's not keeping everything straight.
Okay, what happened? We're dying to know.
Well, Carl was willing to talk.
He said when he got the call on the 11th from Sandra, he says, I remember, she said, Kyle had been murdered. He said, when I first got to the scene and I talked to the detectives, they asked me where I'd been the night before, and I said, and I was just joking, that I have an alibi.
So now his new explanation is he was joking.
I said, due to the gravity of the whole situation, how could you be joking about it? He goes, I didn't know it was that bad. And I said, well, you just told me that Sandra told you he was murdered.
All right, so is there any reason why y'all want to leave KB on your suspect board?
No.
After everything that we've learned this week, KB might know more, but he does not want to talk to us. So right now, we need to focus on his son, Carl. How do you feel about taking the case to your DA now?
I feel good about it.
You feel good about it, Troy?
You know, I don't understand why we should not take it to the prosecutor.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, get y'all's butts out of here and go ask him. We'll wait in here. The case that Gary and Troy will present to the DA clearly shows that Carl went to Kyle on 3 different occasions in the month before the murder.
I borrowed some money from him.
On the night of the murder, Carl's alibi does not match his girlfriend's statement.
He probably came home after midnight.
And he has an unexplained 2-hour gap close to the time when we think the murder happened. Carl returned home that night without the shirt that he was seen in earlier that day.
I remember him leaving the house in that yellow shirt.
A shirt that was never seen again. On the day after the murder, Carl denied driving the car that witnesses saw him in.
That car stood out to you because it wasn't the one that you normally saw.
A car that made the police suspicious.
The only seat that was clean was the driver's seat. It was freshly clean.
Carl was in debt and at the end of his financial rope.
He was always not able to pay his rent there. He wasn't able to pay his student loans.
And between his lies and inconsistencies and his reported ability to snap,
he would just turn on a dime.
It makes you wonder what Carl would have done had he gone to Kyle for money and Kyle said no. You ready? Let's do it. Hi, girls.
Hi, how's it going?
The DA listened to the evidence in the case and gave us an answer, and now it's time to share that news with the family. Today was the day that Gary Weaver and Troy took the case to the DA, and the DA isn't ready to indict yet. He still thinks there's a little left to do, but he has assigned 2 prosecutors to push ahead with the case. So it's all moving forward.
Wow.
It's not an indictment, but having worked in a DA's office, it's a great thing when they're willing to push ahead, and that's what this means. That's a wonderful thing for a case that's been cold for 8 years.
We just thought it went dead, to be honest with you, and I couldn't believe that the Bridgeport Police Department contacted you guys. It blows me away.
Well, Gary Weaver, but you have to give Gary Weaver credit because he put aside his pride to ask for help.
Yeah.
Or we wouldn't be here.
I don't know what to say because we're still all kind of just amazed and overwhelmed and
ชีวิตกับก้อย